Welcome to Immigration Quicktake. This is Ellie Rutledge with the American Immigration Lawyers Association. This week has been a busy one, with both chambers agreeing on a bill funding the Department of Homeland Security through the end of the fiscal year, putting an end to attempts to make immigration riders part of that legislation. Meanwhile, the House Judiciary Committee is marking up 4 bills of interest. Here to discuss action on the Hill and provide an update on the litigation around President Obama's executive actions is Chen, Director of Advocacy at AILA. Greg, thanks for joining me. First off, what happened with the DHS Funding Bill this week?
Ellie, yesterday's House vote was just another interesting turn in this long saga of the DHS spending battle, as well as ultimately a battle about the executive actions that President Obama announced in November of last year. What we saw happen was that John Boehner, the Speaker of the House, announced early yesterday that he would be putting up for a vote the clean bill funding DHS for the rest of the year. And that, in and of itself, is a huge political move for him. It shows just how vulnerable and how essentially the Republican Party is fractured right now. The ultimate vote had all the Democrats and John Boehner, as well as 74 other Republicans, voting for the clean bill, and about 167, I think is the count, of Republicans voting against this bill that their own speaker, put forth. The fracture shows, how the majority of the Republican Party is so angry still about the Obama executive actions and are just going to keep pushing that issue. For Boehner and also for McConnell on the other side of the mall in the Senate, they need to figure out how to show they can govern. And they had to get this spending bill passed and couldn't just keep kicking it down the road every week and doing these short-term spending bills. So that was the choice that Boehner made. It was a real embarrassment, and we're just going to have to see what the next steps are that come forth. It bodes really badly for whether this Congress can get anything done constructive, period, let alone on the tough topic of immigration.
Thanks, Greg. Could you describe the 4 immigration-related bills that are currently in markup in the House Judiciary Committee?
Ellie, yesterday and today, the House Judiciary Committee began marking up 4 bills that I don't have any better way to describe except to call them ghosts of hellish bills from the past. These are bills that were already reviewed and marked up in the previous Congress, either in 2013 or just last year, 2014. AILA submitted statements opposing all 4 bills, and I'm going to run through them quickly. One is an enforcement bill that resurrects the SAFE Act that Representative Gowdy had introduced last time around. It is a kitchen sink of enforcement measures that will essentially erode due process and criminalize those who are unlawfully present here in the United States, and ultimately doesn't provide any solution for how you address the large number of people who are unauthorized, except for calling for harsher and more punitive enforcement. The second bill, which was actually the first one they marked yesterday on Tuesday, is an employment authorization bill that Lamar Smith has put forth. AILA certainly recognizes the need for a functional and nationalized employment authorization, work authorization bill and program. The problem with this one is that it will impose huge costs on employers, specifically small businesses, and it doesn't give enough protections for workers who might get initial non-confirmations under the system. And these could be authorized U.S. workers or people who already have job offers who might lose their jobs or lose wages while they're trying to fix that system. And that could be 150 or 1,000 or more people that would be denied real jobs or wages during these wait periods. The other 2 bills are somewhat related. One is an asylum bill that Representatives Chaffetz and Goodlatte put forth. This comes out of last year's concerns about the humanitarian crisis that came up with numbers of families and unaccompanied children coming to our U.S. border. This bill is really a reprehensible undermining of our fundamental asylum laws and humanitarian protections. It will not only hurt asylum seekers, but also survivors of domestic violence and trafficking who depend on the power of parole to be able to be reunified with family members. It's also going to hurt the family members of military and will also likely make it harder for the president to implement the reforms for entrepreneurs that he announced on November 20th. So the asylum bill is also one that AILA opposes. The last one is a children's bill that is really intended to undermine the trafficking law that's establishing specific protections for children when they arrive and are apprehended and how they are screened due to their younger years. And what this law will do is to lower the standard for all children coming across. There is currently a double standard where Mexican children receive less protection when they are screened, and children who are not from Mexico receive better protection. AILA recommends, in fact, that the Mexican screening protections need to be increased rather than having all countries have less protections. And the UNHCR has spoken very specifically about the problems with CBP doing the current screening of Mexicans being inadequate. Now that the DHS Funding Bill has been resolved, I think Republican leadership will probably turn to the continuing concern over the president's executive actions, and then also border security, which has been a long-standing front theme for them. That brings us almost immediately up to April 16th, which is the National Day of Action, and we are looking forward to seeing hundreds of AILA members come here to really educate the Hill, educate Congress about the importance of having immigration reform and the need for it, which we all know so well as to explain some of the concerns we have about the current proposals that are being put forth, such as the border issues, protection for asylum seekers and families coming here, as well as the need for business reforms, and we hope you will come.
There are 2 litigation updates this week. Could you share what those are?
There are 2 things that are happening right now on the litigation against the president's executive actions. First is happening in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. Sheriff Joe Arpaio's lawsuit against the Obama executive actions lost at the district court level, and now the Circuit Court of Appeals has announced it will hear oral arguments on May 4th on that particular case. The second thing that's happening is the Texas District Court's injunction against the DACA and DAPA programs in the executive actions. And as you remember, the Texas court has the injunction that's now set. The government filed its request for a stay with the district court, Judge Hainan, last week. The judge gave until yesterday for the states to file their response in briefs, and the states did file those yesterday, and now we're just waiting to see what Judge Hainan does. My sense is that if Judge Hainan doesn't give a decision relatively soon, the federal government is going to appeal directly to the Fifth Circuit.
Thanks, Greg, for joining me. For the rest of you, please stay tuned for more updates from the American Immigration Lawyers Association.